my mind, I was able to think and process. And if I let him get back up, he's going to get back up. I was like, let me finish this right now. And I caught him with that left hook, and then I caught him again with that right hook just to make sure the job was done, because I was calculating his hands wasn't touching the ground and his knees weren't touching the ground, but I know he was still going down. To make sure he wasn't getting back up, I had to let those last two off, man.
Combat Sports Report. Only on SportsGrid.
Sadiq Bey coming off the bench. Alvarado missed a lot of time. Jordan Hawkins has had his moments. So, and remember, they picked out even a guy like Kevon Looney off the bench. So, to me, they could be there. You know what? And it's crazy because last year I was so big on them, and now I'm off of them. But I'm going to say it. Fly, Pelican. 7-1. Fly, Pelican. Fly, Pelican, fly. 7-1. Worth it.
So, here's why JY is great, because sometimes I almost, it's tough when I sell JY, because now what will happen is, right? I mean, listen, it's the middle of the summer. You know what I mean? And what's going to happen in 2 months from now, JY is going to go, now listen, me and K-Dub love these Pelicans. I'm like, when did I say that? When did I don't remember that one, JY.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
So I drafted Aaron Jones in my Dynasty League, but he's like my fourth running back, to let you know that people don't really believe in him. And by the way, when you play in a Dynasty League, I always play to win this year. I don't worry about next year. I want to win now. Flags fly forever. I'll worry about next year. So, but I got Aaron Jones last year, 1138. So he's going to drop that down by almost 50% not to get this total here. Yeah, I think he gets, I'll take the over.
Fantasy Sports Today. Only on SportsGrid.
The NBA goes international. We get the latest on a potential Euro League, plus what we know about Maverick Carter and LeBron's pick with Jokic's agent. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Front Office Sports Today, presented by Atlassian. From FOS Studios in New York City, I'm Baker Machado.
And I'm Renee Washington, and thank you guys so much for joining us. Each and every weekday as we chat the biggest stories in the business and culture of sports. We also have to get into some big media news later, as Sophie Cunningham's big podcast deal has been announced. But first, let's jump right into the shoot-around.
Yeah, and let's start in the NFL, as All-Pro defensive end Trey Hendrickson set to end his holdout and report to Bengals training camp, based all according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. The league sack leader last season, still though looking to land that new long-term contract ahead of the season. Schefter says both sides are near an agreement on the length and total value of the deal, but the holdup here is over guaranteed money. But Renee, his arrival might serve as a good faith for these negotiations.
Yeah, and Baker, also on Sunday, when Commanders wide receiver Terry McLaurin turned his holdout to a hold-in and reported to camp after losing out on over $800,000. Trey Hendrickson was the last active player that was still in the midst of a holdout. Now, as you mentioned, it doesn't mean that a deal is any closer. It's still not done yet, but it does show for him, as he was losing about $50,000 per day in his holdout, he's going to be a part of team meetings. He's going to be around the team. He's going to be having a presence there, but still unsure what that means in terms of a deal getting done. It's been several months since this deal's been discussed, that they're still trying to figure it out. He's gone to Florida to miss camp. It's been a lot here. But as we also look at the holdout shifting, there have been some injury news that have been taking kind of the headlines of NFL training camp, especially Ravens tight end Isaiah Likely, who's going to have surgery on a broken bone in his foot. Could possibly be back for week 1, though. So now we shift our gears just from looking at contract deals to some of these injuries that are happening.
Yeah, meanwhile, ahead of the 2026 World Cup here in North America, Vegas is going to host the draw selection on December the 5th, this according to ESPN. Sin City was chosen over locations in Mexico and Canada, and will also co-host the tournament as well. Vegas hosted the draw back in 1994, the last time that the World Cup was held here in the U.S., which is big news for Vegas and potentially maybe the Sphere or Allegiant Stadium that have been rumored to be places that they might do this at.
It is such an exciting detail because this is massive for a number of reasons. As you mentioned, back in 94, that venue that they had it at the Las Vegas Convention Center is booked, apparently, for December 5th. So it is looking like the Sphere, which can hold about 17,000 people, would be the location for it. But it's also the historic moment of the first ever 48-team slate we're going to have for the World Cup that has its draw happening right in Vegas. And so for the It's going to be 12 groups of 4 teams. We get to see who they're playing against. And it's a very exciting time for getting a sense of what the schedule is going to be and what this expanded format is going to look like. So I'm looking forward to this because Vegas is a great spot for this historic moment to take place.
Meanwhile, TMZ reporting ESPN analyst and former NBA player Marcus Morris was denied bond in a Florida courtroom. This after he was arrested on a warrant out of Nevada on a fraud charge over allegations that he received $265,000 from 2 Vegas casinos back in 2024 through bad checks that he did not pay back. Now, his lawyers say he was in the process of paying off his debts, and his twin brother, Markieff, says no fraud was committed. Now, Marcus last appeared in the NBA in 2024, and he's been on First Take on ESPN for a while.
Yeah, we just had good Vegas news. This is not great Vegas news for Marcus Morris, the 35-year-old, getting involved in fraudulent checks, bad checks. Not a great look for Marcus Morris, and especially as you look at the $115,000 from the MGM Grand Hotel and Casino that he never repaid. The numbers, the checks, it's a lot, but it's also a lot on ESPN that you actually have to take a step back on because Baker, we just saw Shannon Sharp just a recent few days ago settle his sexual assault lawsuit with the OnlyFans model that was expected for up to $50 million, settled it for $23 million. Another ESPN analyst in Marcus Morris now getting caught up in some lawsuits and legal issues. So while the ex-Clipper is still awaiting bail, he's down in Florida waiting bail on those fraudulent charges. It still speaks to what will ESPN do when you have these types of situations? Will you allow them to take a step away from the network and return, or do you move on from them altogether?
Well, we got a lot of big media news to get to as YouTube TV has picked their analysts for their first NFL game in Brazil. Plus, one WNBA star just got a big new podcast. So let's chat about this in today's main event. All right, Renee, let's start with The Athletic reporting that YouTube TV has picked NFL Hall of Famer and NFL Network analyst Kurt Warner to be their lead game analyst for its big Week 1 matchup with the Chiefs and the Chargers in Brazil. This comes on the heels of a report that Fox, ESPN, and CBS are being more restrictive in letting their on-air talent work for games for Netflix and YouTube. However, Renee, YouTube has not even chosen Warner's broadcast partner, so who even knows who's doing play-by-play for this?
Talk about cutting it close. It's almost August 1st already. But as you mentioned for Kurt Warner, the Hall of Famer gets to be a part of YouTube TV's exclusive game with the that's coming up on September 5th. And when you look at what this Chargers-Chiefs game is, they've talked about for YouTube wanting to get some of their influencers involved, doing some watch-alongs, and he's going to be a big part on the football side, especially of trying to garner a very large audience. But as you mentioned, no play-by-play broadcaster yet because they've said they've had a conflict with college games and other NFL games since this is a Friday night game of trying to book someone. But I'm sure they'll get those details squared away hopefully pretty soon since it's almost already August.
Yeah, because who are they going to get at this point? All right, let's bring in Mike McCarthy, author of the Tuned In newsletter. Mike, we're hearing that Sophie Cunningham has a big new podcast deal. So what can you tell us?
Well, we just reported at 12 noon that Sophie has landed a podcast with Colin Cowherd's The Volume. And what's interesting about it is she's going to be co-hosting with Wes Wilson. He's this breakout reality TV star from Bravo. And the two of them actually grew up together in Columbia, Missouri.
Wow.
So they've got a lot in common. They've got a lot of opinions, and they're both very hot media personalities at the moment.
And this all comes off the news that the Fever Sky game this past weekend was the 4th most watched on ABC, even though there was no Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese. As much as we talk about the Caitlin Clark effect, how much does this podcast deal with Sophie Cunningham joining The Volume for Colin Cowherd's network really exemplify the ability of the WNBA as well, the Fever specifically, and the WNBA to build their players' brands on and off the court to be similar to what we see in like the NBA or the NFL, that they're more involved on the media side actively?
It's an amazing development. I mean, I think Sophie is a brilliant marketer. She has leaned into this image as Caitlin Clark's bodyguard bestie, and it's led to millions of new social media followers, a new podcast with Wes Wilson, endorsement deals with the Ring camera, and even Arby's. She was wearing the shirt the other day that said, "Sexy girls eat Arby's." So she's leaning into this. And the truth is, Sophie Cunningham has become big business.
She absolutely has. And also, speaking of big business, Colin Cowherd's platform, The Volume, also big business as well. I mean, it seems like a pretty early company that he's been able to develop here, Mike, but he's been getting a lot of big people to join this network.
He has. He's got a deal with Shannon Sharp, who, of course, with Club Shay Shay, is one of the hottest podcasts out there. And don't forget, Baker, he owns and operates The Volume. So this isn't a Fox deal. You know, Colin was smart enough and savvy enough to go out and establish a platform on his own. much like Pat McAfee or Stephen A. Smith is doing now. So if and when he ever wants to sell the volume, I think you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars.
We continue to just see the evolution of media and sports media in general. And Tracy McGrady, the latest of one of those, is the Hall of Famer, is joining his cousin, Vince Carter, and many other notable former NBA stars.
That's
always.
so interesting.
As Tracy McGrady is joining the NBA list of studio analysts for NBC coming up this year. What are your thoughts on just kind of how we continue to see so many Hall of Famers and former greats that are part of this NBC lineup?
Well, I'll tell you, these new NBA rights deals have been like a job bank for former NBA players. I mean, literally dozens of them have been hired by NBC Sports and Amazon Prime Video and ESPN. But I think McGrady's a great move. I mean, everybody knows the name. As you said, he's Vince's cousin. He's got previous TV experience with ESPN and TNT, and I think he'll make a very good studio analyst. You know, Maria Taylor, who's fantastic, is going to be leading NBC studio coverage. So I could see Tracy just sliding right in there and fitting right in with their studio coverage.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see all the people who've been signed with both Amazon and NBC. Mike McCarthy, Mike, thank you as always. And of course, you can get more media scoops from Mike in his Tuned In newsletter. Sign up for that over at frontofficesports.com. All right, guys, coming up, still ahead, the NBA thinking international, as there's going to be new international games in season. And Adam Silver talking about EuroLeague expansion, plus what really is going on in that photo of Maverick Carter, LeBron James, and Nikola Jokic's agent. That's next on Front Office Sports Today.
I have to think long and hard about whether or not you're a Hall of Famer, you're not a Hall of Famer. I don't need to argue stats. I don't need to argue whether or not you are great. If Ichiro Suzuki is not a Hall of Famer, we don't need to have a baseball Hall of Fame. Like, just pack it up and shut it down, because that guy was as good of a hitter as we've ever seen. And he was unbelievable from the first time he stepped onto the field for the Mariners until the end.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
Drummond gives you minutes off the bench. I've always been a big Kelly Oubre guy. And Nick Nurse is supposed to be one of the top 5 coaches in the world. You can't tell me that at 12-1, the Philadelphia 76ers aren't at least something you need to consider as a sleeper to make it to the NBA Finals.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
He'll be your reserve, you know, your extra guy here. Listen, we all need that. I say this all the time about outfielders. Most leagues, I don't know about your league, but we start 5 outfielders. Even if you're in a 10-team league, that's 50 outfielders. Plus you got some guys at utility. Plus you got some guys on reserve. 70 outfielders are gone. All right, so outfielders are extremely valuable here. And Moniak, if he's available, is a nice guy to pick up right now.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
I feel they're all completely justified. You know, the numbers, they're nearly identical. And speaking of identical, I don't know if you saw that one, Craig. That was pretty wild. From winning their first major to winning their 4th major, both Tiger Woods and Scottie Scheffler completed that task in exactly 1,197 days. Both of them, in the exact amount of days, won their 4th major.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, friends of Front Office Sports Today with Renee Washington, Baker Machado, and the NBA adding international games to its schedule next year. This is Commissioner Adam Silver is reportedly meeting with officials in Europe about a potential NBA EuroLeague. So let's bring in FOS reporter Alex Schiffer for more on this. So Alex, these new in-season international games seem to be a pretty interesting idea. Tell us a little bit more about what the NBA is doing here.
Yeah, you know, they're adding games in Berlin and Manchester. They've played in Berlin a few times over the years, but never in the regular season. And now they're going back to Manchester for the first time since 2013, also the first regular season game. It's kind of like if you're a European city and you haven't had an NBA game yet, we might be coming to you to see what you have to offer. And it's going to be interesting, too, because, you look at the Orlando Magic playing. I didn't even think about this until I saw the release. Obviously, they have the Wagner brothers. Germany's got a really good team. I think people forget they won the World Championships a couple years ago in the Philippines. So I'm curious to kind of see how this goes. I don't think people think Orlando Magic European power, but they might draw really well for that game.
Yeah, this will be the first regular season game in the country. And of course, it is the 14th game in Germany going back to 1984. And you look at what the NBA is trying to do to expand internationally, Schiffer. I'm curious your thoughts on what they're having the expectations of a few games over the next course of the couple of years in international countries. How important it is to get this right in terms of which teams are playing in those countries, how they're marketing it to continue to grow their fan base internationally.
Yeah, it's interesting, Renee, because I think they're trying to do as much homework as they can. At the same time, given the amount of money we're talking about that's going to go into this thing, I don't think you can just take one regular season game and attendance numbers from that and merchandise sales and whatever and say, we have enough here to determine that this is a city we're going to go into if this happens. I think it's part of the equation. I think that's fair to say. But I think this idea that it's a slam dunk that if they draw well in Manchester's going to get a team in this new look league or whatever is a bit of a stretch. But I do think that they're trying to get a temperature around Europe where they haven't been in a minute or at all and kind of see how to go about this.
All right, so let's talk about that because you mentioned this EuroLeague here just a few times, just a few moments ago. There's reports that Adam Silver is meeting with officials with FIBA and other teams in other cities throughout Europe about this creation of this NBA EuroLeague. What do we know so far about the NBA's interest in this? How feasible is this likely to happen? And what cities likely could potentially get some teams here?
Yeah, Adam Silver, this has been the drum he's been beating. It's funny, Adam Silver's kind of done a 180. First, it was domestic expansion with Seattle and Las Vegas. They're looking into that, but there's a lot of skepticism. It happens now, and now they're trying to go more into Europe. I've talked to some international scouts who know the European basketball scene better than me. They all think it can work in some capacity, and it really depends upon where they go. To your point, London's been talked about a lot. London and England is obviously known for soccer more so than basketball, but there are, Nick Nurse coached in London or in England. There are some interesting names from the NBA who've come out of there in some capacity or have ties there. So I think that this is going to be very interesting because EuroLeague, is already there. There's some teams with some really strong tradition and fan bases like Barcelona and Real Madrid where Luka played. But I think that, expansion is tough in general. You look at expansion teams like, the Charlotte Bobcats, now Hornets were the last NBA expansion team. I don't even know if they ever won a playoff series since they became a thing in like 2004. So I think that where they go is going to determine a lot of this, but I don't, do you go to Barcelona or Real Madrid, two huge European cities, when those clubs are already there with all their history? Remember Barcelona had Ricky Rubio back in the day, giving some throwbacks out now, but I think that it's going to be very interesting of what this looks like if it happens, because some of the best cities already have a team or a history there, and that's what you want, obviously, but maybe there are some markets like a Manchester or something that can bear some fruit that you might not think about it first.
Well, I know you mentioned Luka, so I do want to talk about his teammate LeBron James, who was pictured on a yacht with Maverick Carter, along with Nikola Jokic and his agent. And the caption of this photo, the summer of 2025 is the perfect time to make big plans for the fall of 2026. Of course, the social media world is in a tizzy, and so are we. Is this potentially foreshadowing a future move for LeBron James, Nikola Jokic to link up in Denver? Please. What are your thoughts?
Renee, I think you should rephrase that question of, is this Baker's wildest dream coming true, or am I going to break his heart? I do not think this has anything to do with LeBron and Jokic teaming up. I also think people forget Luka and Nikola Jokic are the ones that have the real friendship from the Northern European ties. Mm-hmm. And I just think that to make a trade work for either side would really be tough with the money aspect. It would almost have to be like a 1-for-1 swap and, maybe attach something. And again, it just doesn't make much sense. I think that, and also I think it's worth mentioning, this is not Nikola Jokic's NBA agent. He's rep by Excel for, his career with the Nuggets. Jeff Schwartz is a super agent, and Mike Lindemann of Excel. This is his European agent. And so I think that, Maverick Carter, as we know, is trying to start his own league in Europe. I think that there is more value that his European agent can bring to Maverick Carter and their league than his domestic agent. So I think that that's what's being discussed. And is there a place in which that he can help them out there or be a point person for them overseas? I think that's where this is more likely going for some kind of relationship than seeing them on the court together.
Okay,
I agree.
well,
I think it's a business move.
I mean, yes, you would think so. I mean, obviously, I'm devastated that LeBron would not be playing for the Nuggets. But I guess, Schiffer, there's been reports that Maverick Carter wants some sort of F1 international league. Could that be the thing that they're talking about on this yacht?
Yeah, I think that is the most likely scenario of all this. I think that unless they were trying to film with every special episode of Mind the Game, LeBron's podcast with Steve Nash on a yacht, which might be good for viewership. I don't know. You guys are the ones in broadcast, but I think that that's where that would likely be heading, is that there is some kind of working relationship being formed on that front.
That's probably the closest we're getting to a partnership and a duo of LeBron and Nikola Jokic.
But I mean, could you imagine that yacht being on the yacht with those guys?
Where was our invite?
Yeah. By the way, Schiffer, what do you think they were drinking on that yacht?
LeBron's tequila.
Oh, yes, that's right. Of course. Yes, of course. Why would they drink anything else? Alex Schiffer, FOS reporter. Thank you as always. Thank you, Alex. And still ahead, guys, on Front Office Sports today, Netflix is breaking records with Happy Gilmore 2. So how did they get all of those golfers in that movie? We're talking to somebody who talked to Adam Sandler about that next on Front Office Sports today.
Then there's Kalia Copper, a.k.a. the Walking Bucket. I actually think I gave her the nickname the Walking Bucket. I don't know if anybody gave it to her before that, but I know I did. And she's done it in the playoffs with the Chicago Sky winning the WNBA title. It's about matchups. They have played the Liberty 3 times. They've beat them 2 out of 3.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
He's just only 2,300 points behind. So even if he does win at Memphis, he's still going to be behind Scottie Scheffler in the points by 300. So why? I mean, I want Scottie Scheffler to show up in Memphis, but does he need to? If Rory's not showing up and the third place guy, even if he wins, isn't going to pass him?
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
One big problem for NBC, too many on-air cooks for the coverage, particularly on the weekends. Having 4 on-air teams separate time, divide the time, was really outrageous. You had Mike Tirico and his partner. You had Dan Hicks, NBC Sports' lead golf commentator, and his partner. You had Steve Sands from Golf Channel and his partner. And you had Terry Gann, who, by the way, if you don't know, is going to become an NBA play-by-play voice.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Talk to any player. Hey, used to get 18 sacks, got 7 last year. Maybe it's a defensive scheme. I don't like it at the end of the season. Oh, he's got to earn his trust back. No, he doesn't. Just show up at camp the next year and start to dominate once again, and everybody will forget. You're telling me in game number 1, the Miami Dolphins going deep, Tyreek Hill, 6 catches, 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. Oh, man, we're still working in process. No, you're not. The minute you get back on the field, dap it up, get after it, and have a good season.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today with Renee Washington. I'm Baker Machado. Well, one of the most streamed movies you could watch out there right now is the second edition of Happy Gilmore, returning to our televisions. So to get an insight into how all of these PGA players got into this film, which is insane how many names are in them, let's bring in FOS contributor Jake Crane-Schriefels. Jake, thank you so much for joining us. You wrote this great piece for us on frontofficesports.com. So how exactly did all of these PGA golfers end up in this movie?
Well, it was not easy. If you can imagine trying to wrangle, I think it was 27 golfers for a Netflix movie. Clearly, a lot of them wanted to be in it. They were all raised on Happy Gilmore. Anyone pretty much in their 20s or 30s was raised on this movie if you're a golfer. But the fact that they had to wrangle everyone's schedules all together, especially for a scene where, if you've watched the movie, there's a Dinner's Champion scene, and it is at least, 15 players, legends, Hall of Famers. Jack Nicklaus is in there, Fred Couples. You go down the line. It was not easy, but Chad Mumm is really the architect behind wrangling everybody. He is an executive producer for Full Swing, the golf Netflix series, and they reached out to him, and Adam was like, look, I've had trouble going after agents myself. I need you to help get this going, because he had access to all of their personal lives. So Chad was kind of the one that really started the process and figured out ways to coordinate everyone's schedules, and it worked out pretty well.
And what I think is most remarkable about this, Jake, is when you look at when Happy Gilmore was the first one was released. I know Adam Sandler and for the movie itself talked about they could not get golfers to be a part of the movie. Yet here, as you mentioned, 27 golfers, but also other athletes involved as well, like a Travis Kelce. What does this say to the bigger picture evolution of sports movies, that it's not just random actors pretending to be athletes, but you're actually getting the professionals and real athletes involved themselves?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to 1995, it was Lee Trevino. That was the only person who was in that original Happy Gilmore movie. And I think it says a lot, for one, the media ecosystem that all these golfers have come up in. Everyone grew up with cell phones and obviously social media. Building brands is a big thing now for athletes. And so when you think about the differences between the 90s, 30 years ago, a lot of PGA Tour golfers are like, who's this SNL guy who wants to puncture our sport with all this nonsense and chaotic man-child craziness, right? And I think 30 years does a lot, both for technology-wise, but also Adam Sandler's cachet has grown immensely. And I think that original Happy Gilmore finally got people realizing, like, wow, I want to be part of this franchise. I want to tell my kids I was in a Hollywood movie. There's just so many incentives now for golfers to build their brands like this. And I think it was an easy sell once you get into the point of Netflix wants you to do this. You're already doing some Netflix shows. Most of these golfers are. Why don't you come on in?
I love Happy Gilmore, so I love this conversation.
And the movie's so funny. It's the nostalgia is so great in this. In the last 30 seconds or so, what we have with you, Jake, why is golf sort of having this moment? You have Full Swing doing really well. You have the Masters ratings up. Why is golf having a moment?
Well, and Chad told me this actually. It's really grown from a more like domestic point of view. It's not even the pro golfers that are influencing people to play golf. It's just from a base level, I want to get invested in golf. I think a lot of it is the pandemic. You saw the pandemic start and people were really interested in doing the simulators, getting on the course. That was one of the few activities you could actually do where you couldn't socially distance and everything previously with other sports, and that you could actually go out and play sports. So there's a lot of, I think, you contribute a lot of it to the pandemic starting this new wave, but there's just so much more digital content now. All these golf influencers,
right?
People are really interested in the sport itself, and so that lends itself to a lot of media companies taking advantage, and obviously Hollywood.
Yeah, good point. You can read Jake's really great piece on frontofficesports.com. Jake Kring-Scheffels. Thank you so much, Jake, for joining us here. All right, Renee, it's time for the water cooler, and the MLB trade deadline is just a few hours away. And so far, the wildest trade this season has to be relief pitcher Sir Anthony Dominguez, who was traded from Baltimore to Toronto in the middle of a doubleheader between the two teams. Now, Dominguez did not pitch in the first game for the Orioles, but did throw a scoreless inning for Toronto against his former teammates in the second game. And my favorite quote, he told reporters, quote, after the first game, they call me and they tell me, hey, you got traded, go to the next dugout.
I remember last year when Dominguez was traded from my Phillies to the Orioles, and also around that time, it was when the infamous trade happened, historic moment for Toronto again, involved with sending catcher Danny Jansen, over to the Boston Red Sox to be the first time a player ever played in the same game with both teams. Now, fast forward, it's Dominguez and again Toronto that's involved with another crazy moment. But this is what the trade deadline brings. With 162 games, trades often happen in the middle of a game, but it's rarely happening between a player going to the other dugout like we saw with Sir Anthony Dominguez. So wild moment, laughable moment, and
especially because he was like he was friends with all of these guys, and now it's like, oh, I have to get you out now. Guys, coming up on FOS tomorrow, we got full coverage of that trade deadline for Major League Baseball. Plus, NFL preseason officially kicks off. We'll see you later.